You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Because when we were brought up, you did whatever the promoter asked you to do, and you didn't even wait for him to ask you. If you were there early, you helped set up. You just pitched in, and it was a team effort. It was the boys against the world, and it's just changed exactly so much.
Our world is changing, and you talked about entitlements a while ago, where people feel that they're entitled to anything, and it's just not the case. It takes hard work, dedication, and like you said, a passion, an effort to do what you want to do, and especially in professional wrestling. It's not an easy business nor an easy life, and these guys take for granted, like you said. I'll still help set the ring up. I'll still help tear it down. I don't care, because I like the wrestling business, number one.
Yeah, and if you're too good to do that, you don't belong in the wrestling business, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And you mentioned a friend of ours, Kenny Jugan, Lord Zoltan.
Yes.
I mean, him and I go back 30 years, wrestled each other a couple dozen times in the early to mid 90s. And what a great ambassador for the professional wrestling business. I mean, Kenny is just a great guy. He's our age, gotta be, maybe even a bit older. Still out there.
Oh, he's still wrestling. 70 or 80.
Yeah. It seems like he's gotta be 70 or 80. I don't know.
Oh, I know. But I'll take, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said, I hope he's not listening tonight.
No, it's okay if he does. Here's the thing. He used to have a thing called Three Rivers Wrestling Association. Back before the internet, I would get these fan club publications. Tom Burke would put out, Global Wrestling News. And then Ken Jugan would put out all these different people. And then I'd get Scott Teal's program, Slamogram from Tennessee. You see, we didn't have the cable television, so maybe at night in the second story of our house, second floor, if I put the cable to the screen right, maybe at 12:30 at night, I might be able to get Mid-Atlantic Wrestling out of Charleston. And I mean, I grew up reading these magazines, and I was just thinking, as I was telling you guys today, I'm finally starting to write the book, but I remember the thick-faced guy and the smell of Anderson's Drugstore in Chillicothe, which is still in business, but at another location, when I'd run to try to figure out when the next wrestling magazine would come out. And I'd read about Mil Mascaras, Bruno Sammartino. I would read about Freddie Blassie out in California, and all these different people and all this stuff. And I would my vocabulary grew because of wrestling. And also, not only that, my geography, learning geography, because I would find out where the wrestlers were from, or from those wrestling shows was going on. So wrestling really educated me in a lot of ways. I know it might sound strange to you guys, but it's true.
It sounds perfectly normal to me. Hey, Bobby, let me ask you a question. You start out wrestling. You're in a great spot. You're traveling with Wild Bill Curry, Fred Curry. You're wrestling him night after night. What happens from there? Lead us up to the point where you meet the great Tommy Rogers.
Well, I just wanted to just go back just a second.
Sure.
I was still in high school in the 10th grade wrestling. So my Fridays and Saturdays, I would be going wrestling. On Monday morning, I was Jimmy Hines, the Southeastern school student. So my dad told me this, said, promise me, son, one thing, promise me you'll graduate from high school. So upon graduating high school, I broke into wrestling business. First, I was a tag team partner with Eric Embry in Tennessee with Nick Gullis. Prior to that, I was wrestling for Delman, Kentucky. But Tommy Rogers and I was wrestling in Memphis, and he came in the territory, and I met Tommy for the first time, friend with Tom Pritchard. But then me and Terry Taylor were the original Fantastic Ones in a little break-off territory from Memphis and Atlanta. And then I was wrestling in San Antonio. Tommy Rogers was wrestling in Atlanta. The Rock and Roll Express was red hot in Louisiana, and it was a little trade between Bill Watts and Jerry Jarrett. Well, right. Jerry Jarrett then felt like they had got talent that wasn't ready to draw, so they got mad at Bill Watts. So Bill Watts said, I'll tell you what I'll do. Although the Rock and Roll Express was second banana to the Fabulous Ones, he said, I'm going to send the Rock and Roll Express back to you. But in the meantime, he needed a team to feud with the Midnight Express to do a program with. Well, he'd brought in the Bruise Brothers. He brought in the Pretty Young Things, Coco Beware, Norvell Austin, then Tommy Rogers and I. We were a 90-day replacement, but that 90 days changed my entire life and my career. I was working in San Antonio, I was telling you, and he was working in Atlanta. We're both guys 5'8", 5'9", just depending on what day it is. We both like to train. Tommy Rogers was a machine. They put us together as the Fantastics, and Tommy wasn't really up to the ideal of wearing suits and top hats and this and that. He was more of a Jack Briscoe, straight up wrestler growing up from Florida, which is great. But me and him clicked for some strange reason. And that 90 days changed my life and took me to places, gentlemen, that I would have never thought I would ever be able to go, especially a small town Chillicothe, Ohio boy with a dream. And thanks to Tommy Rogers. And of course, people behind us, Bill Watts and Superstar Bill Dundee put us together there in Louisiana. And of course, it changed our careers and our lives.
That's an amazing story, and it's, I didn't know that Terry Taylor was with you originally. And, anybody that knows Terry back they seen a diluted version of him in WWE, of course, WWF.
Right.
Terry could flat out go.
He was a great hand. As a matter of fact, his aspirations was to be like Ric Flair and to one day be the world champion. And Terry was a great hand, and, he was a tremendous wrestler. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking the other day when I seen the Undertaker do his finish to Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar kick out, not put his foot on the rope, but kick out, even though he was dropped on the ring floor, not the padding. I got to thinking, now that's a businessman. And then I got to thinking about when I was leaving World Class. I said, the only one I'll do the favor for here, guys, is Terry Taylor in a single match, and I'll do that because back then when we were leaving and it was regional, you would do favors for people. Sure. And you would pass the baton or whatever you want to call it to the guys coming in. I remember the same thing, and it was vice versa. It was just being business. Some guys didn't want to be business, and some guys did, but with that being said, Terry Taylor was a friend of mine. He was a tremendous hand, a great wrestler. And I've heard Ricky Morton say this too, Cue Ball, and guys, that back then, the opening match, guys could go 60 minutes and tear the joint down. But you see, as The Rock said, they knew their role. They knew the first match was just as important as the main event. But they knew that they couldn't go outside the ring or do stuff that was later on, because as every fireworks show, you see the little fireworks first, maybe a little bigger next, and then finally the last fireworks set of fireworks was the explosion that just set the people rocking. But the guys that worked underneath, we called it. I don't even think they use that term anymore. When you would go into a place, they'd say, okay, you're going to be a guy. We're going to use underneath. But if there was something they liked about you, they would give you a push, or you'd be up and down in the middle of the card, or you went in as the top guy. You already knew your role going in, what you were going to be doing. Sorry I'm so long-winded. I am passionate about wrestling. I want to get a chance to talk about it. I love to talk about it, so forgive me.
No, absolutely. Hey, listen, it's great to hear you. You're spouting nothing but words of wisdom. You're taking me back to the day when we got in. It was the wrestling business, and it was all about doing good business, putting people in seats and making money. Yes, and the undercard, the guys that were underneath had, they were setting the table. They set the table.
That's right.
Then came the drinks. Then came the salad. Then came the main course. Then came the lit firework dessert, which was the main event. And we all understood our spot and our position, and we never tried to take anything from the match beyond us or from the main event. No. It was a totally different business. So I think it's fantastic that you're. I think it's fantastic. That's not a pun. I think it's fantastic that you're talking about this, because for me, it takes me back to my training. But I think for the young guys that don't understand how this business originally worked and what made it great for 100 years was doing business. That was the wrestling business,
Sure.
And so It's amazing. And I'd like to give you a chance a little bit, Bobby, to talk about Tommy. I know the whole business lost a brother when he passed, but you lost a blood brother, a true blood brother to yourself. And, know, it's a shame. And there was a lot of speculation on everything. And I think people that did that got put in their place when they found out, what really happened. And you've been a champion of Tommy's since it happened. And, Buddy Landell called me the day that day and told me, and I was shocked. And of course, we know, Buddy wasn't but a couple months beyond that. So